The preacher of the evening said that he was at the Washington, D.C. airport lunch counter between planes, one of those U-shaped counters. He ordered a hamburger. This is a story that he told on one night. A few minutes later, a woman sat down on a stool next to him and also ordered a hamburger. He glanced at her. She was plainly dressed, stern-looking, looked uncommunicative, sour, etc. He thought she might be a policewoman. They did not talk. After a few minutes, a mother and child sat down opposite them. He noticed the little girl in particular. She was about 10 years old. He found it difficult not to stare. She had the skin of an old woman. He was fascinated and embarrassed because he wanted to stare. The woman next to him kept looking at the child, and that embarrassed him more, not her. Then she spoke to the child very gently. "How old are you?" The child looked up politely and answered, "I am 8. The woman kept on looking and then said, "You have very beautiful eyes." With that, the child's face and the mother's became luminous with joy and appreciation. The preacher was stunned by what he had seen and heard. Later, in the plane, he wondered why he hadn't seen the very beautiful eyes, and why he had eyes only for the old-looking skin. Why? Let's be quiet for a bit. Yes, why? Why don't we all see the beautiful eyes of people around us? The beautiful eyes of the soul. And if we don't see them quickly, why don't we keep on looking until we do see them? And find them. Those beautiful eyes of the soul. There is so much in people we don't take time to see. So much that people say that we don't take time to listen to. Why? I was at the National CFO, FFO, and Leaders Retreat in Georgia in May. The leaders were all divided up into groups of 4. In my group, there was one that many of you know, Dave Blair. 2 others, and myself. We were to share what CFO meant to us, share it with one another, and what our hopes for CFO were. And Dave was the first to speak. And although I had known Dave, he shared things I had never thought of before in connection with Dave. And I watched him while he talked. And the expression that came into his eyes while he was talking about what CFO meant to him and what his hopes were for CFO, what he could see in the future. It was tremendous. Just watching, I had a chance to know a part of Dave that I had never known. And then another person, one that I'd known much longer than Dave, Jack DeGarmo from California. Jack began to share. And again, although I thought I knew him, I discovered the depths that I'd never seen. Why hadn't I seen them before? Why hadn't I looked deeply enough? Why hadn't I listened? Because I'm sure he must have shared some of it at some time, somewhere, where I was. Yes, I asked myself the same question the preacher asked himself. Why? Why don't we see? Why don't we hear? It was a tremendous session there in Georgia. Leaders, counseling members, representatives of the Camps Farthest Out, CCR, a wonderful session. First time I've ever been at such a meeting, when I've enjoyed the financial report. And it was fun. Well, I enjoyed listening to the minutes of the last meeting a year ago. That was fun too. When I listened to them try to solve one of the problems that they had concerning insurance, that they think they're going to be asking the camps to take care of, so that when or if campers are injured in camp, there'll be a way of financially taking care of some of the things that might happen that we hope don't happen. It was fun. Because by that time I was looking and I was listening to everyone. Makes all the difference in the world, even in financial reports. And I've not been very fond of them. I've heard an awful lot in church annual meetings. We listen to choirs sing. How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good tidings, who publish peace. A tremendous, tremendous anthem. And then I thought of another verse that might be added. How beautiful are the eyes of the soul of those who love Jesus. And who go about publishing his tidings. How beautiful. Oh, I have it in the proper number of words written down somewhere. Beautiful. We have the saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You've heard it, so have I, many times. It's also in the eye of the person who is being looked at. There's something there too, not just in the eye of the beholder. Yes, why don't we see? Why don't we understand? Why don't we take time? I picked up a booklet that Glenn Clark wrote. It's been reprinted. It's available at the book table. One of the finest things that he has written, The Three Mysteries of Jesus. Takes up the cross, the blood, the name. In it he tells of how a person can be identified in 3 different ways: his thumbprint, through the blood, and through his name. The particular portion I want to read a bit of is from the section on the blood. I read this to Glenn Clark while he was in the hospital just a few days before he died. He wanted to have this read to him, and every day I read different portions, but on one particular day I came to this part in the section on the blood. It deals with this matter of seeing. Just breaking into it. I wish I could read the paragraphs that precede this, but I cannot. He says, we put Christ on a cross of suffering every time we sin. We invite him to an upper room of joy every time we do a service of love to one of the least of these in his name. Every time we betray him, we crucify him. Every time we obey him, we hear him say, come down, for today I will sup with thee. As we continue to let the blood of the blessed Christ flow through us, by the way, he was having a blood transfusion while I was reading this. And I kept looking at that bottle and the dripping of that blood used in the transfusion. And several times I prayed silently, Lord, he needs a transfusion from you. A life-giving transfusion. Yes, as we continue to let the blood of the blessed Christ flow through us, not only is our sin washed away, but more and more we become like him, made over into his image and likeness. Hawthorne tells the story of the great stone face, how a legend grew up in the little village at the mountain foot, promising that someday a man would come who would look like the great stone face, with its sweetness and peace and strength reflected in its countenance. A little boy who loved this great image was always looking for this promised man to come. First one and then another stranger came to the village, but they never met the test. Then events led the little boy to leave the village, and not till years later did he return. But when he did, the whole village went out to welcome him, for he bore upon his countenance the strength, the courage, the sweetness, and the majesty of the great stone face. As we trust Christ utterly to live our life for us, to let his blood flow through us and his love breathe through us, our countenance, too, will reflect the love and peace and majesty of Jesus. When I got to the part that I have just read that refers to the little boy who loved this great image, I looked over and there were great big tears rolling down Glenn's face. Of course, I knew something. And these tears indicated the same thing. Glenn had spent a lifetime looking into the faces of people, looking for something. Looking not only at the eyes, but looking at the soul. He was looking for people who, in a way, looked like Jesus, who had the gentleness, the kindness, the patience, those qualities that we find in Jesus. He was searching for them, and he found many of them in the camp. One of the most amazing characteristics that he had, so far as I was concerned, he could find people. He saw the potential, just as Jesus saw the potential. Jesus found the rock in Peter. But Peter didn't know anything about that rock. And Jesus said, upon this rock, that which he found in Peter, that faith, he would build his church. He found in Mary, sitting at the feet of Jesus, something that he longed to find in the eyes and in the actions of people, both men and women. People who loved to sit at Jesus' feet and learn directly from him. And he found them. And after he found them, he took time to teach them some of the things that they yearned to hear from Jesus. And it was amazing. Yes, those tears represented one of his greatest soul-sincere desires, to find people who were like Jesus. And the camps, in a way, he thought of as training grounds of the Spirit, training people to be like Jesus in their actions, in their attitudes, in their responses, in their faithfulness, in their willingness to go way beyond doing something just because it was a duty, but because they would love to do it. People who wanted what Jesus wanted, only what Jesus wanted. Yes, it was amazing to see those tears and realize what he was thinking about while he listened. There's another reference found in a book that has meant a great deal to me. I don't know how many of you know this book, The Hand of God, by Oswald McCall. Any of you? I don't know if the book is out of print now or not. Probably it is, because I haven't seen it in any of the bookstalls in recent years. It's a book of inspirational writings, almost like prose poetry, built on the idea gathered from Rodin's statue of the hand. Do you remember the statue? This hand, and held in this hand a lump of clay. The encircling fingers representing the love of God. The molding thumb fashioning people, guiding people. Putting on the finishing touches, the heavenly finishing touches. The hand of God. The book is a story of McCall's search. Sounds, in the reading of it, as if he might have been quite a skeptic to begin with. And then it shows the progress. Near the end of the book, it breaks into some tremendous ideas. I want to read a few of them. Breaking into the last sentence of the chapter before the one I want to take this from, it says, with some uneasiness, I began to search my heart. Suddenly, I sank upon my knees. You do not see it? No. Among grief's cold ashes, he is there. If any flicker of life's fires ever stirs in that arid wilderness, it is of Christ. This is no fancy. Look and see. Skipping several lines I'd love to read, but I'm not going to. I gathered one day very carefully, sifting and making clear the motives that underlay a certain decency of feeling I discovered in myself that I might build some picture of my better essences and look at it. Lo, I found myself building the face of Christ. Yes, he found his face wasn't good enough. He must build the face of Christ. Like a star in a deep well, so Christ shines always in our peace. And peace there is not where Christ is not. You do not follow me, nor see that this is so. Nay, neither did I always see. The sap does not flow until the spring, and the grapes grow not purple before their season. Neither does a man see until he is ready. And who gets him ready? Jesus, of course. The Holy Spirit at work. He's the one that convicts us of sin, of righteousness, of judgment. The Holy Spirit is the one that prepares us. Now I say, let but that be found which breaks the heart of man with yearning. Let that be found which is the secret of man's singing and the answer to his striving. Find the truth behind illusion. Find the poet's inspiration and the prophet's passion. Let that be brought forth which is what human trial, error, and judgment have best and longest proved. The rock-like substantialities of experience and the most abiding and rewarding ways for man. And when these are all set down as lines in the face will be the face of Christ. Skipping a few more sentences. I fulfill, he said. I fulfill. You do not see it? No. The purple is not there until the grapes are ripe. Light of the world, Christ, light of all worlds, infinite and infinitesimal, for out of them all you came, trailing clouds of glory, fruit of creation's travail, housed at last in flesh, fair son of a Father that cannot be unfair. In your light we see light. And you, great Christ, burning brightly in Jesus, striking into us the ecstasy of a hope, and suddenly crowning us all by being what you are, Jesus Christ, elder brother, revealing as of the Lord and Master, revealing as of the peerage, even the least of your many brethren, you, Lord and Master, have made us look upon the hand and understand. Jesus, making it possible for us to understand the hand of God, the workings of God. The perfecting of God, molding, upheld by love in the process. Hand of the Father, strong, and of the Father. Glorious purpose has there ever been amid circumstances grand or dire. And ever as the purpose ripens, we see your face again, Christ, forming in men's faces who grow friendly with God as you were friendly, and work with God's purpose as you worked, until his kingdom comes. Until his kingdom comes here on earth. You know, Glenn's main theme in all of his talks, sooner or later, got around to, it is possible to live in the kingdom of heaven, here and now. You're finding this to be a bit like the kingdom of heaven, aren't you? I know after our first camp, we went back home again, and the first sermon that Roland preached after the camp experience, that first experience, was what it's like to be in the kingdom. I'm not saying that everyone in our church liked it. The empress was kind of rough, having been a pastor there for a number of years, to start talking about what it's like to be in the kingdom as if you had just experienced it, but you hadn't experienced it before, not in that church. But that was more or less true. It had been a divided church when we went there. And that church learned how to love. And it was the kingdom for many an individual, but it took a few years for it to happen. It's what it's like. He went home and described what it had been like up here. How he had spent 2 weeks and he hadn't heard a single bit of criticism of anybody. Nobody finding fault. Nobody complaining. Everybody ready and eager to do anything that they were asked to. Now, for a preacher, it would be heaven to be in that kind of an experience. That's what every preacher wants. That's what every preacher is striving for. But in a divided church, you don't always find it. But we found it. It happened. And perhaps it happened because we kept on coming to Koronis and sitting at the feet of some giants. Speaking of giants, down in the Arkansas camp one year, Glenn Clark and the 4-year-old daughter of one of the Arkansas CFOs had a conversation one afternoon. We knew it was going on. We saw the two of them sitting out there on the lawn talking together. We had no idea what the nature of the conversation was. The little girl was the one who wanted it. That evening, Glenn Clark shared with us just some of it, not all of it. I think I could find a note that I made and then tried to recall this afternoon. I don't need the notes anyway. I know what she said. She said to him, people. And apparently she meant adult people. And it could be that she meant the people there in the CFO, the adults there. She said, people are like giants. But you can only see the bottom of them as they walk around. Their legs, their feet. She said, you never see the top part of them. And I'll tell you, he got quite a talk out of that he delivered to us. So much in a person we never see. We never appreciate. We never understand. Giants. But you can only see the bottom part of them. Well, I guess a 4-year-older spends most of her time just looking at the bottom part of people. Their legs, their feet. They don't see their faces until you stoop down. Then they can see you. Seeing. And then letting that which you see expand. Because you pray. I'm going to be stopping a little early this evening, but not quite yet. so that Verna may share something she has wanted to share but hasn't had a chance. And I decided to just cut out a chunk of what I was going to say in order to give her a chance. Let's close with this that you'll find in Song of the Souls of Men. God, let me be aware. Let me not stumble blindly down the ways, just getting somehow safely through the days, not even groping for another hand, not even wondering why it all was planned. Eyes to the ground, unseeking for the light, soul never aching for a wild winged flight. God, let me be aware. God, let me be aware. Stab my soul fiercely with others' pain. Let me walk seeing their horror and stain. Let my hands groping find other hands. Give me the heart that divine understands. Give me that courage, wounded to fight. Flood me with knowledge. Drench me in light. Oh, keep me eager just to do my share. God, let me be aware.